The sport of drifting originated in the mountains of Japan, but it's now hugely popular here in the UK. My name's Robbie Head and I'm going to run through some of the techniques involved in drifting, but there are plenty of cars out there that you can do it in. There are lots of ways to drift a car, but I'm going to take you through the 10 most popular techniques to get it sideways. Well, you might have heard of the braking drift. Well, what this technique is, you trail brake into the corner, it throws the weight of the car forward, losing rear end grip, and then you balance it on the throttle and the steering all the way through the bend. Pretty spectacular. So this is a braking drift. When you approach the corner, you trail brake your way in. It throws the weight of the car forward, losing grip at the rear, and that gets you into that sideways motion. Approach the corner at high speed, on the brakes, throws the weight of the car forward, get it turned in. So to the Kansai drift or power over drift, you approach the corner at full speed, lift off the throttle, that throws the weight forward, loses traction at the rear, and then you balance it on the throttle all the way through the corner. The most popular drift in a rear wheel drive car. The Kansai drift is the power over drift. When you enter the corner at high speed, you lift off the throttle, that throws the weight forward, it then picks up grip at the front, loses some grip at the rear, and you get into the drift, if you see what I mean. Enter the corner at high speed, you lift off the throttle, that throws the weight forward, it then picks up grip at the front, loses some grip at the rear, and you get into the drift.
bought the car about 5 years ago now, and I went to tune it up a little bit in my local garage and realised what they use these cars for in Japan, which is drifting. Got into the car, started driving it, getting used to driving it, and just got hooked on the sport basically. There was only a few of us in a local like airfield, ex-airfield, and now we come to big events. I'm travelling all over Europe, doing promotional days like this. You need rear-wheel drive with a bit of power, and there's not many cars, available with rear-wheel drive these days. Also, the Japanese is the trend. I think the kids are into that trend, so the Japanese cars are the ones they pick. Some of the lower-powered Corollas will be 150 horsepower, but they're very light cars. Obviously, the more heavy the car is, the more power you need to push it. This car's running about 300 brake at the moment, brake horsepower. That's at the flywheel. It's quite a heavy car compared with some of the lighter cars, but it's a happy medium to start with this sort of power. They adjust the whole chassis to suit drifting. The engine's upgraded, the gearboxes, the differentials, 100% lock differentials, handbrakes, everything is modified on the car basically. But you can do it in stages. You can actually start to drift in a standard car and just build your way up. It's great fun. I mean, it's reasonably cheap to get into to start with, as a lot of other motorsports aren't these days. You can buy the car, you can go along to your local practice day, learn how to drive. It helps your car control. It's just such a great way of driving the car and excellent fun.
The inertia or faint drift, one that's close to my heart. It's also known as the Scandinavian flick, and it's used in rallies.
Of a flat crest, narrows, 80 down.
So with the faint drift, you basically turn out of the corner, so that's opposite to what you would think. That unbalances the car, shifts the weight, and then when you turn the car back into the corner, you lose the rear end, it goes into the drift, and then you control it with the power in the steering through the corner. Now this is the inertia or the faint drop drift. It's something that's quite close to rally drivers. It's a Scandinavian flick style approach where you turn out of the corner to begin with to unbalance the weight of the car. Then you turn in and carry that drift through the corner. So if you watch the steering, approach the corner, and I'm going to unsettle the car. I'm going to turn left, right, and then left again. Round we go. Approach the corner, and I'm going to unsettle the car. I'm going to turn left, right, and then left again. And And round we go. It's a rally driver's technique and it's used to unsettle the car by turning out of the corner before you turn in. I'll give you a demonstration. Approach the corner. I'm going to turn right and then left and then get on the throttle. Rally driver's technique where you really unsettle the car when you turn it out the corner and then back in, and that gets it sideways, and then you hold it there. This technique is called the handbrake drift, very simple to operate. You pull on the handbrake, it locks the rear wheels, breaks traction, and that initiates the oversteer. And then from there on, you drift with the throttle and the steering. Handbrake drift, quite simple. You pull the handbrake on, it locks the rear wheels, and then you get the car into a slide, something like this. Get the car into the slide, pull the brake on. What you do is you pull the handbrake on, it locks the rear wheels, gets the car into a drift, and then you continue it round the corner, something like this. Pull the handbrake on, get the car into a drift, and then hold it on the throttle.
ホットバージョンドリフトエクストリームです。はい。ご覧の通り通常 D1 で戦ってる4名です。通常ガチンコだからね。本当の姿、本当の俺たちのドリフトの姿っていうのが実は今日なんです。ちょっとね変わった縄跳びとか馬跳びとかわかります？It's
hard to imagine what they're talking about. Let's just see them perform. First up is the cross-line drift. The cars changed position and crossed each other's driving line. Everything is done while drifting. Next up is the vaulting box drift, captured on film for the first time. The vaulting boxes are replaced by cars. The drivers will each take turns drifting and weaving through the stopped cars. These guys are crazy. The incredible show of drifting skill continues. First, 3 cars begin to spin around. Just like what you would do with skipping ropes, the 4th car joins in on the fly. Please don't ever try this at home. The crowd was amazed with the drifting skill and the stupidity of their performance.
This technique makes use of the countryside. What you do is you drop the tyres onto the dirt, there's less grip there, and that helps maintain the drift angle through the corner. No loss of power, good speed. Take a look. Now the dirt drop drift, that's when you drop the back tyres onto the gravel, it gets that sideways motion easily and you can carry it all the way through the corner, something like this. Drop the rear wheels onto the dirt and gravel, that reduces the grip, gets the car sideways and gets you into that drift to begin with. Dirt drop drift. What we do is we get the car onto the dirt, use that extra slippiness just to carry us into the drift. It's quite a good technique. Get the car onto the dirt, use that extra slippiness just to carry us into the drift. So to the clutch kick drift, this is initiated by dumping the clutch pedal. It sends a shock wave through the transmission, it spins up the rear wheels and that initiates your drift. Then you simply carry it through the corner with throttle and steering. Clutch kick drift. What you do is you approach the corner in second gear, then I'm going to dump the clutch to get the car sideways like that. Brakes the rear traction, quite slow in the transmission, but it gets you into that drift motion. aggressive, but it works. Dump the clutch, that breaks the rear traction. Approach the corner in second gear, then I'm going to dump the clutch to get the car sideways like that. Breaks the rear traction, quite slow in the transmission, but it gets you into that drift motion.
was actually chucked in at the deep end in Japan, where I watched drifting at Ebisu in sort of outskirts of Tokyo, and they had a rotary and roaster meeting where they had drifting, and that was the first experience I had of drifting, and it was at a professional level. And I had an MX-5 at home in London. I thought I'll give that a shot when I come back to England. Well, the S13 is very popular in the drift world because it's a very cheap car to start off with, and most importantly, it's rear-wheel drive. Second reason is the mods on it are very easy to do. The modding is like a telephone directory. There's so many things you can do to it that are cheap and effective. This car at the moment is pushing out about 300 horsepower at the flywheel, and it's running a T28 ball bearing turbo, GTR front mount intercooler, GTR injectors, GTR fuel pump, Grady low compression gasket, in conjunction with a custom ECU map, and that will give you the 300 horsepower that's just about right for drifting. The Sport itself is not too expensive car-wise, because you can pick up a nice clean S13 for around about £500 upwards. But once you move past the initial car stage, and the most expensive factor is tyres. Of course, if you can get hold of part warns, that works out a lot cheaper. But alternatively, I prefer to use new tyres, because a part-worn tyre might only last 1 lap or 3 laps. But with a new tyre, at least you're going to know it's going to last 25-30 laps at least. So you don't have to have the expense of having the rubber changed off the rim all the time. The course we have here, although it does look like nice smooth tarmac, it is very abrasive. And that's why on a set of part-worns, we might be only getting 5 to 8 laps. Whilst on a circuit, we may be able to drift nearly all day if we have brand new rubber. For a beginner, a smaller tyre is actually more beneficial because it's easier to get the car to start drifting. When you get onto more experience, then a bigger tyre is beneficial because you get less tyre wall flex and you can go into corners faster with more control.
So a drift that's bound to get you noticed by the judges is called chocadori. What you do, once you've got the car drifting, you basically wag the tail of the car. It's impressive. Now the chocadori drift, that's always a good one to impress the judges. Once you get that drift going, then you work the steering, impress them, because that's what gives you the points. Goes something like this. Bit more throttle and then sort of wag the tail of the car. Not easy to carry out on a short corner, you need a big long corner to do that one. not easy on a short corner, but you need to try and move the back of the car round by swinging the steering. Again, you want to just wag the tail of the car. Get it in, flip with the throttle a bit, and actually use the throttle and the steering to make the back of the car wag. Good one for impressing the judges.
Dory Dory in front for the first leg. Dory Dory tries to escape with a surprise start, but Orito stays right on him. The amused S2000 Toge Monster is our camera car again. Orito's MRS on the hunt, but the Drift King desperately tries to get away. There are no safety margins for this race. Spirit's MRS suffered from oversteer last time, but it looks like the car can go full throttle today. The three cars jump into the hairpin. Orito goes in too fast, which caused the understeer. Tsuchiya's Hachiroku getting away. The close match goes into the high-speed sector. Orito's MRS catches up with the Hachiroku with incredible speed. The MRS wins the first race.
やばい。今時の車はやっぱ速い。畜生。もう一本。
Orito's MRS at the front for the second leg. Tsuchiya's Hachiroku gets left behind on the straightaway, but the chasing position for this second leg is a mental advantage. Tsuchiya trying to put pressure on Orito in the corners. The last-minute adjustment on the car is working well for the Spirit's MRS. Looks like the hairpin turn was a walk in the park. Tsuchiya's Hachiroku can't catch up. The cars are entering the high-speed sector and the MRS should have the advantage. The Drift King is going all out, but the gap isn't narrowing down. Tsuchiya's Hachiroku bites the dust.
さあ、峠の魔王、超ヤバトル。
ヤバトル。
負けちゃいましたね。
久々じゃないですか、北園86が。
まあでもさ、1984年の車だよ、俺のは。
そうですよね。
だからね、今までね、勝てないのがおかしいんだよ、みんな。
ですね、逆に言うと。
そう、みんな1800とか2000持ってきてさ、大人げない。
ついにね、やっぱね、北園の走りかっこいいね。後ろから見れると。やばいもん。
峠はやっぱりああいう走りじゃないですか。
あのね、速さじゃないんだよ、男は。
ですね。
かっこよさ。
かっこいい。
かっこいいかどうか。
俺たちなんかさ、俺なんかアンダーしか出てないもん。
さあ、ということで、なんと峠の魔王を打ち破ったのはスピリッツ MRS でした。優勝。
おめでとうございます。
社長がいないと勝てんじゃないですか。
そう、社長がいるとダメなんだな。
社長うるさいからあれ。
ね、社長どうしちゃったの？
どっかなんか音信不通ですね。
音信不通。さあ、まあ仕上げとしてはね、 アンダーなんだけど、すごい高いレベルの速い速度のアンダーだから、
そうですね、
許せるかな、ね。でやっぱね86はねもう足回りが古いせいかあのスピード域だともうオーバーが出てくるね。
もう限界超えてますね。
でもかっこいいからいいんだもん。
確かにかっこいいですね。
はい。ということで優勝峠の魔王を打ち破ったのはスピリッツ号でした。おめでとうございます。
ありがとうございます。
ねやろ次見てろ。
So to another technique we can use, it's called the shift lock drift, and basically what you do is approaching the corner, you're carrying speed, you click it down a gear too much, that locks the rear wheels, it induces wheel spin, then you get it into the drift motion, carry that through the corner. Quite aggressive, but it works. So the technique I'm going to show you now is called the shift lock drift. And when you approach the corner, third gear, I'm going to shift it down to second. It's going to lock the rear wheels and then get me into that drift. Something like this. I'm going to approach the corner in third gear, click it down to second. I'm going to get more revs and that's going to break the back of the car away. When we're approaching the corner we want to downshift and that briefly locks up the tyres and then brakes you into the drift and you can carry it through the corner. Again, quite aggressive on the transmission. We want to downshift and that briefly locks up the tyres.
Drifting as a sport has been in the UK here for about 5 years. I've been involved from relatively the beginning of it, which has been 5 years in this country. From my background in Ireland, where I grew up doing rallying and various other sports, we always had the sideways element of driving. So the drifting was just really a progression of what I'd done for many years. No rules or format. You can have a good drift car in anything which is a relatively good power to weight ratio and rear wheel drive. We've got 130 horsepower Toyota Corollas here and we've got 400 horsepower Skyline and 200SX. Basically if you've got a light car you don't need much power. If you've got a heavier car you need more power because the element is to keep the rear wheels spinning the whole time. front engine, rear wheel drive, and affordable. That car is valued about £2,500–3,000, but you will pick up that on the Skyline 4. You have the alternative 200SX, BMW models, etc. Future for drifting is very, very good because we have been recognised and a few of us have been licensed in the UK now to compete in the Japanese level of the sport, which means that outside of America and Japan we are associated with having the best drivers now. So we've now got drivers from Ireland, England and Europe competing in mainstream events mainly in the UK. There is a minimum of 5 to 6 rounds of the current UK Championships. There is plenty of practice days, and the common means of accessing them, we use the forum Driftworks, which is www.driftworks.co.uk, and that covers practice days, general events, competitions, etc. Qualifying is done in single runs, where one car is judged by a panel of judges on its ability to negotiate normally a course of left and right hand corners. When the final element of competition comes into, normally the top 16 round, is twin drift, where there's 2 runs given. One run, lead car, chase car, where they're judged on speed, angle, and their ability to either overtake or shadow the other driver. The next run, they change position and do the same. So that is the way it is judged. If it gets to a 5-5 run, which is an equal run, the cars are run again, and they can be run a number of times until either driver makes a mistake or a judge's decision is final.
Another technique you can use is called the jump drift. When you launch the car over the curb, that unbalances it and you get the oversteer. Then you can carry the drift through the corner with the steering and the power. Well, this is a technique called the jump drift. When you launch the car over the curbs, it unsettles the rear end, you get the oversteer, and then you can carry the drift through the corner. Let's give it a go. Hit the curb. When you launch the car over the curbs, it unsettles the rear end, you get the oversteer, and then you can carry the drift through the corner. And finally, here's one to impress the judges. And remember, the more you impress them, the more you score. It's called the dynamic drift, quite similar to the chokidori in that it's a combination of all the techniques that we've looked at so far, something like a freestyle.
What it is really a school. It's a different type of driving school, and it's a way that you can come off-road and experience drifting and try drifting for yourself. We teach people the basic techniques so you can get a good grounding in what you need to do to become a drifter. Well, first of all, you need the car, which has to be a rear-wheel drive car. It has to have a limited slip differential. That's quite important so that you can keep the car drifting once you've broken traction. I suppose the other thing really is what's involved is certain techniques that you wouldn't normally use in a car if you're driving it on the road or even on the track, which is really what we teach. It's about how you use the steering wheel, how you use the throttle, and how you're using the brakes to make the car drift and to keep it drifting as long as possible. We're mainly using Mazda MX-5s. We found that they've been very good for teaching people that haven't done anything like this before. We've had several drivers now that haven't even driven a rear-wheel drive car before, and they've come along to our days, got into an MX-5, and they're drifting, you know, by the end of the day, as well as anybody that's had years of experience. So it's they're very, very good cars. They've been very reliable, and people enjoy driving them. So they've been great. We do have other cars that we use throughout some of the advanced courses. We've got Nissan 200SXs, the usual drift cars, but the MX-5s have been very good for us.
In the southern tropical islands of Okinawa, our own Keiichi Tsuchiya was elected to campaign on behalf of local authorities to promote highway safety. Tsuchiya's posters were all over the islands, and the man was even invited to the island in person.
ということで今回はこのように沖縄美ら島ね、ポスターだけじゃ済まないでしょう俺の場合は沖縄県警に交通指導ですね追う方も追われる方も上手くなってほしい
For the driving session, 35 selected drivers from the Okinawa police force were in attendance.
使うかなんですね。
The behind-the-wheel session was done on a course laid out by Tsuchiya himself.
アクセルワークうまい。83点。ステアリングワークがダメだな。やっぱり82点。
Since the men were selected individuals, they averaged very good skills. However, there were exceptions.
雑。身長、本日一番身長を争ってる。我が道行ってますよ。
To add more excitement, Tsuchiya has invited this man to participate.
2周様子見してよし。2周様子見してよし。
パトカーという車には後ろに何回か乗ったことはある。
さようか。
Nomukin shows off his self-trained driving skills.
綺麗でしょ。
The officers are now even more determined to show off their skills.
ブレーキがうまい。あと荷重の逃がし方がうまい。94点。うまいうまい。追跡したら絶対捕まえるタイプ。どこでアクセルを入れたらいいかっていうのは分かってる人たちが80点以上の人たちです。アンダーステア出してハンドルだけ切って曲がってる人。これは2コーナーのスピード感覚が読めない人です。
To finish off the day, the participants received the chance to ride along with Tsuchiya, see a professional driver do it right.
荷重をずっとタイヤにかけていかないとね。これアクセル入れて。いいね。やっぱり。タックインのような感じです。そう、3、4はいいね。ブレーキで向きが変わる。
As he drives around the course, Tsuchiya's lecture heats up. The police car was hauling. Check it out. This is the real thing. First time on film. Drifting done with a real police car. The officer in the passenger seat was starting to look pale. Due to strong requests from participants, we wrapped up the day with officers getting a ride-along in drift cars. The officer who rated the highest score received Tsuchiya's autographed driving gloves. The special driving session ended with success.